So you got a little bit drunk last night, started making calls and sending texts full of 3 a.m. regrets. And foolish me, I picked up that call and got to relive our love.
Welcome to this edition of the Whiskey Malt Music Acoustic Radio Podcast Series. I'm your host, Todd, middle initial C. Walker. Yes, that's right, it's me. And I have an interesting gentleman sitting next to me today. This is Brenden Bosmans, and he is a singer-songwriter in the greater Frederick, Montgomery County area.
Yeah, Southern Frederick
and
County.
Thanks for coming by, first of all.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And I have to thank you. I was listening yesterday to a lot of your music online.
Oh, boy.
On YouTube, and you uploaded like an album's worth of stuff within the last 3 days. And it's Soul something or something Soul?
Soul's for Sale.
Soul's for Sale. And I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, gosh, this reminds me of a group that I downloaded like 15 years ago or 12 years ago. And I think they were called the Bees. But the Bees are actually from Europe. These were the US Bees.
Uh-huh.
But I lost the downloads because I, got a new computer, the hard drive, all that stuff. But anyway, so I'm searching for it, and they're actually called the Silver Seas.
Silver Seas, okay.
Now, they used to be called the Bees, parentheses, US. And so I was able to download those songs, which I loved. So thank you very much for
Well, there you go.
triggering my memory.
Yeah, so that album it's really made up of stuff. So I think when people hear like, oh, there's a new album, this must be all new stuff. Actually, that's like a lot of stuff from 2022, 2023. And I write a lot. Okay, so I kind of took all the darker songs I've written and threw them on one album. So that's what Souls for Sale is.
Well, they may be darker in subject, but a lot of them are very picked up as far as tempo and sound.
Yeah, I come from like a pop punk background, which is like Blink-182, and so yeah, no matter what I do, it always comes out poppy, even if I try not to. And I fought it for a while because when I got back into music, I was like, I want to do Americana style, more bluegrass, but everything I was writing, like I would think it sounded Americana, and then I would show friends and stuff, and they'd be like, oh, it's got like pop punk elements to it. I'm like, daggone it. Like, I'm trying to get away from that. But now I've just embraced it. So I'll just write, whatever I'm feeling.
So we'll talk about what made you get out of music for a while and then how you got back in. But when did you start? Were you a kid that played band or what?
So I grew up in a very musical family. And my mom is a music teacher. She would have my brother and I singing like 3-part harmonies in the car from like the youngest age. Then in high school, I took choir, which I did really just to be with the girls. But then I started really liking it. And then I did madrigals there. And madrigals really taught me how to write harmony parts and interact, because with madrigals, you have no instrumentation to back you. So that was a very great learning experience. And then I started playing guitar and writing songs. I've never been good at like covering songs, so I would learn a song to learn the chords and then get distracted and start writing. So this was ingrained in me, I guess.
So how did you start playing guitar in the first place, though?
It was Nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard Teen Spirit for the first time, that's like, wow, this is so different. And it got me interested in guitar. And then that started me going back and listening to the influences of Nirvana, which is really the Beatles. And so really started studying the Beatles. And that's where the basis of my sound came from. And then when I got a little bit older, I started getting into like Blink-182, Phoenix TX, Sum 41. And that started me down a whole other avenue, because that was, it wasn't grunge is great, but it didn't have like all the harmony parts. And I don't know, the melodies, well, Nirvana's melodies were amazing, but other grunge artists, it's okay. But with the pop punk scene, the melodies really counted. So that resonated with me. I did like the whole band thing, did recordings, did pretty well with it, considering, I never broke mainstream, but, went on tours. My friend Joe Bird, and that was on Damien's podcast, we had a song called Forever that blew up and got to like number 18 on the charts.
Really?
And it was just a total fluke. But we were like going up against Britney Spears and stuff. Now, we didn't stay on the charts for that long. It was like a couple days up there, but it was really exciting. Never been able to repeat that, though. I don't know how that happened.
Now, were you under contract with a record company at the time?
No. We had recorded that independently at a little studio in Fulton, Maryland. And we put it up on, it was mp3.com, which was kind of like the Spotify of its age. And for whatever reason, it just got picked up and played constantly. So
now, I think it's still being played, isn't it? Like on Spotify and some places?
You might be able to find it out there. So that was like a weird transition in my life, where when I got out of college and I was like, now I got to get serious. I'm getting married and stuff. And I was applying for finance jobs in banking. And I was like, I need to pull down all my music. And I don't know why I thought that, but I was like, I need to have a professional image. And at that point in time, like now, you probably couldn't pull down everything, but at that point in time, you could get yourself off of Google for that, if you pull down stuff. So unfortunately, I still have the CD and stuff, but it may be floating around out there somewhere.
Now, going back to when you first started guitar, did you start with an electric or an acoustic?
No. My parents, or my mom, had seen me start many instruments and then give it up. So she thought this was probably just going to be another passing fad. So I was like, no, I'm really serious about it. Well, she said, you're going to do 1 year on the classical guitar.
Okay.
And so I did that. I got through my year. And I really don't think she wanted me to have electric guitar, because she set this impossible goal for me, which is, being a finance person, you think I would be really good at math. I'm not when it's not percents and dollars. And so I always struggled in math, but she was like, if you get a A in math, you can get an electric guitar. I got that A.
Wow.
And then went back to C's right afterwards. But I made it happen. And, then my mom knew that I was really serious about it.
So what did you get for an electric guitar?
A Yamaha Pacifica.
And they've made a comeback.
Yeah, I kind of wish I had that first guitar. It was like I traded it in. But yeah, that was my first electric.
Now, a friend of mine has one, at least I think it's the Pacifica. They have two new models. One is the Pacifica, maybe he has the other one. But Yamaha, they make better guitars than most people think.
I find their quality amazing. Like on their, just the cheap acoustics, the intonation, and that's like really the important thing. You don't really need money to get started with guitars. You need to make sure you have a guitar that has good intonation. But,
oh my gosh, if it doesn't sound good and it doesn't tune.
Yeah, and I think when you're beginning, if you're getting frustrated, if you're hitting your E's in tune, but you go to A and it's an A sharp or something, that's frustrating. So you don't need that. And honestly, like the sound quality of some of these cheaper acoustics now, I did a blind test because I was playing for someone. I was showing them, I got a Martin D18, and I was like, really proud of it. And it's like, this sounds really good. And then they said, well, play your other guitar, which was an Epiphone $99 one. And they're like, they couldn't hear the difference. I was like, no, of course there's a difference. Well, then I blind recorded them and listened. Honestly, I could not tell the difference that much. So that's like one of those things where if someone wants to get started, do it. Get a cheap instrument that has good intonation and you can get good sounds.
Well, Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven, that lead guitar part, the acoustic guitar, was played on a Harmony Sovereign.
There you go.
Because that was the poor man's D28.
Yeah.
Because people, either they couldn't buy Martins in Europe at the time because they weren't
still
available.
Super expensive there. There's tariffs on them. So.
And, I mean, John Sebastian played a Harmony. A lot of people played Harmony Sovereigns. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be a $4,000 guitar to sound good, but it does have to tune and intonate. You're spot on that.
Yep.
So how did you gravitate, or what happened where you mentioned you pulled all your music down. Did you get out of music for a while?
So at that point in time, I was writing some acoustic stuff, but not sharing it. It's really kind of a mystery to me why I got out, but I was out for like 18 years. Two things happened. One, I started, working, bought a house, got married. And it was like one day I didn't realize what was happening, but it's like the guitars went into the closet and then they didn't come back out. And like all my guitar stuff got packed up in boxes, and as we moved, these boxes would move, but I never would unpack them. The other thing is I worked had started a company with my brother and my friend Joe, and we did distribution and music marketing. So I was working in the music business on that side of things and really didn't want to play music then. Like it kind of ruined it a little bit.
And you would think that it would actually make you want to play in a way.
Well, if you're dealing with music all day,
Maybe that's right.
It worked out differently. So music had, and then that company eventually, it went under, but we were able to sell a division of it, which is still around as far as I think. I think it's been renamed, but it's still around. We don't have anything to do with it. But then in 2021, I was cleaning out our attic, and which was a terrible decision, and it still is not cleaned out. But actually, no, it was a good decision, but the effort to clean out did not really happen because I found my old music stuff, and I started opening up boxes and going through things, and I had like boxes, hundreds of tapes that I had done of different things. And so I would sit up there. My wife would think I was up there cleaning, but really I was up there listening to old tapes and pulling out guitars and stuff. And I really think I was like on a discovery of like, who am I? Because I was a totally different person. Art, music was such a huge part of my life, and then it disappeared. So then I got back into one, it was learning my old songs. So I started doing that. And then next thing I knew, I was writing again, which is something I didn't think I could do. And then once that started, then it just went, I don't know, it was like wildfire because all of a sudden I'm buying guitars everywhere, buying recording stuff. I talked my friend Joe into working with me again, and we both do recording. And my wife thought that this must be a midlife crisis of some sort. And I kind of thought that a little bit too. But now I don't. I think I got back to who I actually was. And, I wasn't happy in life for years. It was work and money and stress. And now I have something that, I can escape to. So.
I had that conversation earlier today with a gentleman, and I told him that, because I used to be a surfer. And I mean, once you're a surfer, you're always a surfer. Like once you're a guitar player, even if you don't play, you're still a guitar player.
Yeah.
What surfing was like for me, and I think for many people, was no matter what was going on in life at that time, bad stuff, good stuff, whatever, when you were in the water surfing, all that stuff went someplace else in your mind.
Yeah.
You didn't think about it. And all you were concerned about was having fun in the surf, waiting for the next wave, chatting with your buddy next. Hey, did you see that wave? And playing guitar and singing, or maybe just playing, for me is very similar. All that stuff, like if something's really bothering me, it just kind of goes away for that half hour or that hour.
It becomes like a Zen-like state. And for me, it's really like in the writing process, I'll start writing, and I write kind of subconsciously. So lots of times I'm doing something else. Well, when my work went remote, all of a sudden I could do like my trading for my job and stuff, but also have a guitar in my hand at the same time. So it was like great for music.
It's a good thing it's not a Zoom.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't do it on Zooms. But yeah, so I would just kind of passively write, like come up with chord cycles, and then, maybe like a verse would pop into my head. And usually I start by writing the first verse and then kind of figure out where the song's going. But what ended up happening is once I started recording, it was like I would write a song that afternoon, and then that evening I would go straight to recording it.
You're quick.
I do write fast. My feeling is that if the song's not coming together fast, it means you're not feeling it right. So, I'll maybe record an idea and be like, okay, well, it's not going anywhere right now. And sometimes it'll come back, months later. But yeah, so I write fast, and there's no right way to write. Everyone has their own process. The other thing that I try to do is I want it recorded within 24 hours. And I believe that there's a certain point where you can capture something, like whatever emotion you're feeling, it's in that first 24 hours. Mm-hmm. But if I was to wait a few days to record, or a week, it kind of feels like you're just doing a cover of what you were feeling. So I try really hard to capture it immediately. And it's crazy because a song that may take me 30 minutes to write, next thing I know, I'm 6 hours into a recording of it. It'll be like all of a sudden it's 1:30 in the morning. I'm like, oh my gosh, where'd that time go? So that's what I mean. It's like a Zen-like state, because I just get so into it, and then I add parts and do the harmonies and things like that.
So do you normally, and I know there's no normal, like you said, you can write songs, everybody does it differently.
Yeah.
But are most of your song, at least the song ideas, 30 minutes, an hour?
I mean, complete song.
Yes.
30, 45 minutes.
Really?
I don't think it's anything special about me, but it's just, that's how my brain works. Like once I have that first verse, it's just things just start falling in place. Sometimes I'll come up with these great melodies, and it'll be like, I'll do da-das, to, find your place. But I have such a hard time adding the lyrics later. It's like, sometimes it's just scrapped. But then later it will be, all of a sudden I'll realize, oh, I put that part in that I wrote 6 months ago into this song, so it'll crop up later.
So do you, as you're doing this, it's popping into your head, are you writing things down, or you just keep it in your head and write in your head?
No, I have to write down. So I have like a composition book that I keep. I write in pencil. And I try to be really organized. So like at the top, I'll figure out the BPMs, what capo it's on, what key it's on. And then the reason I write in pencil is because I can go through lyrics, and there's something better about erasing something to me than scratching out with like pen. So all my songs are written down, immediately. The other interesting thing that happens is that by recording it and having it done, it's like I can release that, release it from like my head. Mm-hmm. And then the next day I'm at a blank slate again. Well, before, when I was younger, going into a studio was a big undertaking. You want to be well practiced and everything. And so I would spend so much time practicing the songs for studio that I wasn't writing as much. Be like, oh, I'd like to write, but I've got 6 songs to record, and I've got to have these things down. modern technology has really freed us up. Another thing is like having an iPhone with that little voice memo app. I can't tell you how much that has helped me, because I can have like a song idea and then maybe I have like a meeting to go to. So I'll get the song idea down and then I'm driving down 70. A lot of my lyrics are written driving on 70.
Isn't that interesting? I've had other people tell me that.
Yeah, I'll just put on the notepad or the voice memo and listen to it, and I'll be like, okay, I got lyrics. And then as I have lyrics, I'll just turn on the voice memo again, like da 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 da, and then when I get back home, I'll put it all back together. So,
well, right now we're going to take a little break, and I'm going to play one of your songs.
All right,
so people can hear, and we'll come back, and then we'll continue the conversation. Is that cool?
Sounds good.
So we'll be right back. You stay right there.
Sometimes it's better to say goodbye, 'cause holding on hurts too bad. I'm just sorry never got our time, and the pain of waiting took its toll. I'll become a memory to you, and in your mind I'll reside, and I'll always be part of you. I'll stand guard for you through the lonely hours of night. You'll never be without my love. Live on as a memory in your mind. I hope you can remember me for who I am.
Welcome back. We're sitting here with Brenden Bosmans. We were talking about how you write songs, and I am amazed how quickly you can write them. The fact that you write them quickly, and like you said, you get kind of in a Zen state, and all of a sudden it's 1:30 in the morning. In, say, a year's time, how many songs can you write?
I think over the past year, I think I've written about 125. Somehow since 2021, I'm at like 370.
Are you really?
I don't know. Well, part of it is when I first got started into writing, I was like, I don't want to lose this spark, because whatever's happening right now, I've lost it before in my life. I couldn't write any songs. And so it became a bit of an exercise. So I'll write a lot, and sometimes I'll just throw myself into be like, okay, I'm going to start on D minor and write in 6/8 time. So it would be like, I'm just going to try this and see what happens. So it's like I try to push myself to learn, or I'll learn like some weird chord. I'll be like, how can I implement that? Like, I'm going to pull this off somehow. So
did you have any music theory training in your past?
I was horrible in music theory. Oh my gosh.
Because the way you talk about it, like you just, I'm going to try this, in 6/8 time.
Yeah.
Because many of us who play by ear, someone will say, oh, that song's in 3/4 time. It is?
Yeah.
We don't know.
So I did take music theory. I got awful grades in it. And also at that point in time, I thought it was like, oh, you're trying to constrain me. You're keeping down my creativity. And I felt that way about like the click too.
Oh, the click is tough.
Yeah. So it was when I got back into recording, and I was like, okay, then I started learning piano and stuff. I was like, all right, I got to learn all my keys again, what's in there. So it became actually a tool. What I didn't realize and I wish I'd realized this younger. When I was being taught music theory, I was actually given like the keys to freedom. But we don't know that at that age, you know? And then the other thing was like learning to play to a click. Now I play to a click really, really well, but it was a struggle. And I remember you talking like in your podcasts of Damien Wolf, how there is that like singer-songwriter thing where there's that interaction between the voice and the guitar, you know, how hard you hit, when you hit. So the way that I started overcoming that was I would record myself just on the iPhone, playing it naturally with no click, and then go back and see, okay, where am I accenting? And then I would write that down. So then it became, I guess, more academic when I go to lay like the first click track of the guitar, that I would be like, okay, accent this. And also singing the song in my head while reading the words helped a lot. But yeah, for all those starting out there that think the click track is the devil, practice with it. It will make you a better guitar player and musician all around, because eventually that click will become internalized. And that's another thing, that if I have something that is very difficult to play to the click, I will sit with the click going for like 5-6 minutes, not playing.
Oh, just to absorb it.
Yeah, because I think it gets in your subconscious. So it is annoying as can be. Like, I'm like, oh, I hate it. But when you turn it off, all of a sudden,
It's still there.
I'm right on it. Yeah, it's stuck in my head, so I can still kind of play to it.
Now, do you tap your foot at the same time?
Well, if I'm recording, no.
Because you can hear it.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, some of the microphones get really sensitive.
Yeah.
And we were talking, or you in your podcast, you talked about the two different musicians, those who are really comfortable in front of a lot of people and those who are like studio. For me, I really like the studio environment. I feel really creative. I do shows, but my gosh, I love it when I'm actually up there. But I always get like butterflies before.
Oh, but everybody does.
Yeah. The other thing about the shows is that sometimes I feel like I'm kind of like, if they know my music from the recordings, well, I can't do all that there. So they're really stripped down versions of songs. And so sometimes I feel like I'm just like letting people down in like some weird way. It's like, you came to hear one thing, but you're getting like, it's like most of the tracks are muted and you're only getting 2 tracks.
Gee, I thought there were more voices in that song.
Yeah, no, that was me doing 3-part harmonies, and it's really hard to pull off the 3-part harmonies live.
It is, and I don't know if you've ever used one of the vocal harmonizers, and I've tried.
I won't do it.
I've tried them, and I have friends who use them. The ones who use them very sparingly, like only once in a while, it's okay, but it becomes almost like karaoke to me.
Yeah. One person that I've seen that's in a scene, Freddie Long.
Yes.
He pulls it off really well.
Yeah.
He's a great musician.
He is. And he is, I knew him as a guitar player first. And so when I saw him at the Weinberg, they did this thing for a while where they'd bring in 4 bands and they'd hire out the Weinberg for an evening. And they wouldn't allow anybody upstairs, and I knew somebody. I guess it was somebody who set it up for the Frederick News Post and whoever sponsored it. And they allowed me to go up and take photos. Yeah. So I got a lot of fantastic, I think they're fantastic, with the stage lighting and everything. Well, and sometimes, and I was expecting when he came out, and he was the 4th performer that night. And the only unfortunate thing for him was each band had their group of friends and family.
Oh, that's the worst. Yeah.
And so what they would do is if they were the first group, their friends and family left. And then the second group. So by the time he comes up, now the theater is only a quarter full. But I was expecting him to be playing guitar, and he sits down at the piano. And I'm like, what? I didn't know he was a piano player first.
Yeah. Well, those people that left early missed something good.
Oh, no, they did. But, it's
stay the whole show.
And I have to give him credit. He has maintained an open mic hosting presence for a long period of time.
Yes. That was the very first open mic I played was one of his. And I was really nervous going into that because I hadn't played live in so long. And then at that point, I hadn't released any recordings. And it was like, people are going to like any of this, But
Now,
there's always that sense of self-doubt, right?
oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, when you're in the studio, you're playing sitting down?
Most of the time because I'm running the computer at the same time.
Okay.
So,
and when you perform,
standing up, which is also difficult because I'm writing sitting down, I'm recording sitting down, and then I go to stand up and play guitar, and I'm like, yeah, I have to actually practice because it is a big difference.
it is a huge difference. When I ran the open mic at the Frederick Coffee Company, my good friend Tommy 1M Wright, who's a member of Fame, he was running the thing every week, didn't want to do it every week, so the owner came and said, would you do the other so you guys alternate? Didn't want to do it, but it turned out I really loved it. So what I learned was when people would come up, I made sure there was a stool and a chair,
Yep.
always a music stand if needed, and they'd come up and, say the two previous performers stood up. So they come up, I said, do you want to stand, sit on a stool, sit in a chair? Oh, no, I'll stand. Well, how do you play at home? Well, I sit on the couch. Let me get the chair.
Yeah.
Because it does change the dynamic.
It changes it completely. But you just brought up Fame, and I think we should talk about them a little bit. That is an amazing organization within Frederick, and I don't know if Frederick musicians know how great of a thing they have here because there is a community. So it's the Frederick Acoustic Musicians Enterprise. It's a nonprofit. And they've created a community of musicians that really help out each other. Like I've made some incredible friends through that, worked on different projects with them. They've played with me. And I just feel like they have a really good mission, both with getting music out to the public that's local. They have a guitar thing starting, I think it's Sunday at 11 at some brewery. You got to go to the Fame website, but it's for teaching beginner guitar.
Oh, that's right. It's I'm trying to think of the name of the brewery, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And, just to have those things where, and it brings together beginners and some really, really talented musicians.
Yeah.
So it's a great organization. And if you're in this area, it's like not much to join at all.
No, it really is not. It's minuscule, really, if you think about it.
And you'll get a lot of opportunities and you'll meet a lot of people that will support you. And it doesn't matter if you're just beginning. They will nurture that.
It's interesting talking with musicians from, say, the Baltimore area, the Northern Virginia area, especially the Baltimore area. And this, I'm talking 10, 15 years ago. Someone said, you have it good in Frederick County. I said, we do? And they said, well, yeah, you have a lot of music from a community standpoint in Frederick. We don't have that in Baltimore. I said,
I hear the same thing about like the DC Salisbury scene. It's like we all kind of compete with each other. It's like we pretend to be friends, but really, I was like, Frederick isn't that way. This is a very welcoming community to artists in general, but especially musicians. And I think it's organizations like Fame that have made that happen.
Yeah, the thing that is unfortunate, and it was driven by COVID, unfortunately, like a lot of businesses, restaurants, it didn't make any difference what it was. Many of the ones that were around prior to COVID have disappeared for whatever reason, went out of business, whatever. And for acoustic music, the coffee houses were the home base.
Yeah.
The Frederick Coffee Company, Mike Winder, terrific businessman, terrific guy. He was so wonderful in allowing us to do the open mics, to Sunday songwriters, live music every Friday and Saturday night. When COVID came along and he had to kind of consolidate everything, he realized that he didn't need to stay open in the evenings anymore. In fact, when he looked at his books, after 6 p.m., he was losing money, even though on, say, an open mic night, we would fill the room.
Yeah.
The problem was you'd fill the room, but you only sell 2 sandwiches and 4 coffees.
Yeah, if I go to open mic, I'm always like, I'll order drinks and food because I know if you want these open mics to survive, one, you should really bring friends.
Correct.
And you've got to support the business that's hosting them. So I always make sure to order stuff, and because they're really going out of their way, because it is not truth. You could lose a lot of money on an open mic.
Yeah. I have a rule of thumb though: when the open mic is at a brewery, don't drink the beer until after you've performed. Carbonated beverage, man.
Yeah.
So let's go back to guitars for a minute. You play Martin guitars now.
I absolutely love them.
So when you left the Yamaha Pacifica behind? And
that was electric guitar.
Right.
So,
but how did you get into? You said you started thinking more acoustically. What did you pick up first for guitar?
So I primarily, I really play acoustic 100% of the time. Every song I write is that way. I'll bring electric guitars in on recordings, but I just don't find the same feel. There's something about an acoustic where you have the rhythm element and the guitar element at the same time. When you play electric, you really don't have a rhythm element. Drums are so important to electric, and it's hard to play well
Percussively.
Yeah, because it's really not there.
Yeah.
But why acoustics and why Martins? I mean, they're beautiful, but
They are.
Martin creates works of art. I think when I was younger, the thing that got me thinking about acoustically different was Nirvana Unplugged, and he played a D18, and so I really wanted a D18. But I mean, Martin guitars are not cheap. A D18's like $3,000.
Yeah.
But you're paying for craftsmanship. I also really like the history of, the inventor of the Dreadnought guitar. It's like the iconic guitar that everyone else duplicates. They invented it.
Absolutely. It's amazing. I mean, there were all these, what did they call them? The knockoffs back in the 80s that they got sued for because they were making guitars that looked identical. Even their logo looked like the Martin logo.
Yeah.
So now you have a D18 and a D28?
So I have a D18, a D28 1939 reissue, a D35, and a D16.
So which is your favorite and why?
I don't really have a favorite.
Okay.
So it's funny because I'll like not play the D16 for a while, and then it'll come out of its case and I'll play it, and then I'll be like, oh, this is the best guitar ever for like 2 months. And then, then I'm back to the D28, and they're each very different. If recording wise, the D18 records really well. The D28 is good to supplement that recording with. The D35 is new for me, which you installed the pickup for, and I really appreciate that. So I've only used it on a few recordings right now, but it's D18 and D28 is primarily what I record with.
Even though the D35 is new to you, and for those of you watching, a D35 has a 3-piece back.
Yes.
Whereas a D18 and D28 has a 2-piece back, the D18 in mahogany and the 28 in rosewood. Do you notice a difference between the 28 and the 35 with that 3-piece back? Is the sound a little tighter, maybe a little more compressed?
It is. Now my friend Joe has a D35 that has a Koa wedge in it. That is a totally different animal. There's something about that Koa wood
to give it more mid-range, maybe.
I don't know. I always tell them every time I play it, it's like the guitar sings back to you because the whole back flexes, so you feel the notes like up against you. It's a really interesting guitar. It's like the Seth Avett, issue. I wish they would standardize that Koa wedge because, as far as I know, it's only offered on that model, which was a limited run. But
Martin does some interesting things with their models. I read an article in an old acoustic guitar magazine. When I say old, it could have been 6 months ago. I put them in a stack and then pick them up occasionally and read them. and it was the history of the Martin OM, or the OM style guitar, and how they brought it out. It didn't do very well, so they shelved it for a number of years, quite a few number of years, and then it was brought back, but it was never until fairly recently in their actual normal line. It was always a specialty guitar. So
Now
like
they're
you're
getting
saying,
pretty popular.
now they're
Yeah.
really popular.
Yeah.
But you're saying with that Koa wedge, I would think what they would do is make a limited run every year, so that the mainstay is the 3-piece rosewood, and then you also can buy this rather than just having it specific to that one player. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Daggone, it's another guitar I'm going to have to buy. It's a bit of an addiction.
It's a problem, folks.
And I keep saying, I don't need another Martin. Like, I've got it all covered. But if they come out with that Koa wedge, I'm going to have to get that.
You know, they're inexpensive line, and Taylor does the same thing. They have this, I don't know how they apply the graphic to the top. You know, they can put a cowboy guitar, it's a cowboy scene, or it can be palm trees or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I almost wish they'd do that on an expensive version,
Yeah.
because I like color. I like blue. And right behind you over there is my Vector, which is royal blue, and I've got another one that's blue. I have an emerald guitar. It's all carbon fiber, which is kind of an emerald green.
Yeah.
I love color, but they only do it on the inexpensive lines.
Yeah. I don't know why they do that.
Yeah, but I agree with you. You know, it's a good habit to have. When I talk about habit, is buying guitars. I need to get my selling habit to equal the buying habit.
Yeah.
Because if you look around the studio here, there's guitar cases everywhere. If you go in my house, there's guitar cases everywhere.
I have so before this, back in my teens, those electric guitars, and I still have like a dozen
Do you really?
electrics
Yeah.
that's, still in the attic, and then I have a few out. I've never been able to part with them. I think because I regretted selling that Pacifica, which was my first guitar, and it's
Yeah.
like, I don't want to get rid of any more guitars.
So what's the electric guitar that you tend to use in the studio more than the other ones, if there is one?
Yeah, so it's a guitar that's actually really rare. It was made as a limited edition run, but it was done by Squier. It's called Squier Jagmaster. And they issued it it was made at the Japanese factory, which was really good for Fender. And it's all made of vintage parts because they were trying to save money. So they sent here's like all of our stuff from like the hardware from the 50s and stuff. That guitar's special to me because that was like the first better guitar I bought. I mowed lawns to get it. And I think at that time I was like $299, which was, a lot for back then. I went on Reverb to see like how much these things now, like $1,700 because there's so little of them. And you would think, oh, it's a Squier. No, this is not a normal Squier. It's the made in Japan Squier, which is just as good as anything American made.
It is amazing to me reading articles where they interview a mainstay musician, whether it's an electric player or an acoustic player, and they'll say, what do you play on stage? And they'll say, what do you have for guitars? Well, I've got this 1939 Martin and this. What do you play on stage? An Epiphone.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? But that guitar works for them. And one of the electric Stratocaster styles, Fenders, that a lot of the professional guitarists use is a Squier. Now, they've hot rodded it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they're fairly inexpensive compared to the American-made versions.
Right.
And they can hot rod them because you can change necks, you can do all.
You don't feel
can't do
so
with acoustic.
bad doing
Right.
that with like, if you have like a Fender American made and like you want to change configurations and stuff, it's kind of like, do I really want to do this? Because it's valuable. As soon as you make changes at that level, people want that, from the factory. But you don't feel bad modding.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you were to go on tour, let's say a 12-date tour, and you've got your 4 Martins, which one, if you could only take one, which one would you take?
Probably the D18. That one's the most versatile of all of them. The D28 is one that I actually kind of worry about because was a very limited edition run. I didn't realize I was buying something that was going to go up in value so much. but I always am like, with this thing gets stolen or I drop it. Like, and that's kind of sad because you should be able to have a guitar and not worry about that. But that's kind of when you get into the higher priced guitars, you start to worry about them being hurt, I guess you would say.
Well, it's like you've always wanted a specific sports car, and you get old enough and you acquire enough income in your life to purchase it, but you only drive it on summer Sundays when it's no hotter than 80.
No traffic.
No traffic.
Yeah.
And so are you really getting the enjoyment out of it? But I totally get that, because there are guitars, and people say, well, why don't you ever play that guitar that you introduced 2 years ago? No, I don't play that out much. I may play it out if I'm doing, say, a concert type situation. Not that people ask me to do concerts very often, but an open mic, no, that doesn't go to an open mic. There's too many people to bump into. There's too many, it's just, you have to look at it that way.
If it's at a brewery and you've had too many beers, and your likelihood's just going to go up.
I mean, I'll ding it at home just as, myself, never mind walking through a room full of people. So, of all your songs, what are your top three, if you have the top three? And it can go way back to the punk days.
So more recent stuff that I've released. There's a song on the very first album that I put out, which was March 11th of last year, called Why Me? It's the very last song on the album. I think that that's some of my best writing. No one notices it. But that's okay. It's at the end of an album anyways.
And what's the name of the album?
Oh my God, My Fall.
Okay.
Which there was no deep meaning to that. It was my fall because I wrote all the songs that previous fall. So,
well, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and then my daughter had done like a collage, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. So I used it as an album cover. Yeah. Actually, my daughter does most of the album covers. She helps pick out.
Oh, terrific.
I just let her do that.
So what would be number two?
Like probably Hey Sarah. That song was written at a time. So my friend Joe's mom was, she was passing away, and I was waiting. We were going to go there and go play for her at her bedside. She was home on hospice, and I was waiting for Joe to call to say when it was good to come over. And I wrote that song just in the spur of the moment, right before going over there. And I got to sit there and then play for her, and she really loved it. Aww. And so it's kind of funny that the song's about something totally different, but to me it's connected to kind of the last memory of her.
Sure.
And she was an amazing woman. Number one, oh my gosh, I don't know.
Well, you don't have to come up with one. I mean, I'm going to try to find the other two so I can at least play one of them at the tail end of the podcast.
Yeah. The song that's doing, why can I not remember the name of it? The song that's doing really well that I didn't recognize as a good song is the second song on the 3 LP. Because Purple Flowers is what I thought was like the single, which it's done well. But recently, it's the second song. Why can I not think of it?
That's okay. I'll find it.
Yeah, maybe play it after this, whatever.
Well, on that note, we're going to call it quits for now. Okay. I may bring you back for a second podcast.
I would love that.
Because then we can talk a little bit more about some of the specific songs.
Yeah.
And do that. And thanks so much for watching, folks. And you remember, tell everybody who you are.
Brenden Bosmans.
And how could they contact you if they want to see you
Instagram,
online?
That's Brenden Bosmans is my Instagram. I'm on TikTok, but that could go away. So Spotify, that's like my main place there. And
you're also on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of forget I have a YouTube channel sometimes.
That's okay. That's how I find you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe I should pay more attention to that. But most of the stuff I do is like Instagram.
Yeah. So. Well, thanks so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And we'll see you folks next time. Thanks for watching.
I see you there, sneaking stairs. Can you read my mind? Can you read my mind? I felt scared when our eyes locked. it's more than just a crush. Do you feel the same? There's a spark about to ignite. Do